morning, everybody. I think we are streaming live now, and you can see Anjan. You can see Anjan on the screen. So welcome, everybody. My name is Anijo Mathew. I come to you from Chicago. If you have logged in, you're on BITMAA's first webinar called BITMAA-Munch. For those of you who are not aware of what BITMAA stands for, BITMAA is the Mesra Alumni Association. And this was started a few years ago in 2013 when a group of 1963 batch alumni in the US wanted to contribute back to BIT and found out there were no clear channels for doing so. So with the blessing of Sri C.K. Birla and the administration of BIT Mesra, they started this organization, which was called BITMAA, a 501c3 organization that helps alumni give back to our alma mater. So BITMAA-Munch is a brainchild of BITMAA's executive board. We had a very successful conference called BITMAA Rise in New Jersey this year. And after the conference, we felt that the conversation should keep going. So BITMAA-Munch is a forum where we'll highlight the amazing alumni that have come out of BIT Mesra over the many years. We adopted a webinar series to make it easier for people to tune into conversation from wherever they are. So Munch, as you know, is a word in Hindi that means forum. So in this forum, over the next few quarters, we will invite several successful BIT Mesra alumni, as well as current students, faculty, and other people. And the whole idea is to talk to them about their journey, their successes, their failures, so that we can learn from these luminaries as we start our own journeys. Now, of course, there's a lot of things that's going to happen today. As you can see, we are streaming live, and I'm going to be in conversation with Anjan Lahiri. But before I start, I want to acknowledge the core team of BITMAA-NA who helped put this together. There are too many people to name, but I, of course, want to highlight Sharath Tatapudi, who worked so diligently to make all the technology work. Even now, he's in the background in New Jersey, making sure things are working. Thank you, Sharath. Okay, so here's how this will work. About 200 people have registered for the webinar. We will get to Anjan soon. But before that, I want to tell you that the way this will work is the focus on YouTube Live will shift to Anjan as soon as he starts talking. But I am going to be focused on the chat that's happening in the live window. So if you have questions, make sure you collate the questions and ask them to Anjan as part of the conversation. So what I will do is then as soon as you start putting those questions up, I will start collecting them and then putting them together. And then I will ask Anjan those questions. Now, of course, you might have follow-ups. Again, start putting them on the live chat. And then we will put them together and then ask Anjan that. So if everything is good and ready to go, we'll get ahead with the webinar itself. Let me start by introducing myself. I'm an associate professor at the Institute of Design at Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago. For those of you who don't know, the Institute of Design is an 80-year-old school of design and one of the pioneers of what we now know as design thinking. You may have all heard of this term. We are a strategy and planning school more than a design school in the traditional sense of the word design. I graduated from BIT in architecture in 2000. And since then, I've studied at Harvard University, did research at MIT Media Lab, and my PhD is from the UK. In my research, I look at how cities and organizations are changing because of technology and how organizations can redefine strategy using design-led innovation. Of course, the star of today's show is Anjan Lahiri, who I will be in conversation with. Anjan is a BIT luminary like nobody else. I bet Anjan at the RISE conference this year, where his most energetic and inspiring talk literally caused a furor among the participants. He's very good at talking. He's very inspirational. He's an 87 graduate from BIT Mesra in ECE. He's currently the CEO of Birla Soft. He began his career at Wipro Infotech, But of course, we all remember him best for being one of the founders of Mindtree Consulting. Along the way, he's been the CEO of Saskin, where he actually took them into one of the most profitable consulting in India. After his BITMAA-NA engineering degree, he did an MBA from the University of Florida in Gainesville. And today he comes to us live from Cranberry in New Jersey. So over to Anjan to start the conversation.
Anijo, thank you very much indeed. And it's a pleasure and a privilege. I know it's a Sunday morning here in the East Coast, and many people across the world on a Sunday. So thank you so much for giving your time to listen to us. I'm very, very excited about this webinar series. Very excited about this continuing process of engagement that we have across the BIT alumni and across BITMAA. So quickly, let me get into our topic. So when I was first approached, number one, I was overwhelmed. It's a privilege to be here, privilege to talk to all of you. But let me quickly get into the topic. So the question was, what can I share that can be of any interest? There are stuff, you can learn about anything that you need to learn about online, on YouTube, everything is there. So what can I bring that will bring some value, hopefully, to somebody who's listening in a one-way manner? If it is a two-way manner, then the biggest thing that I get is I learned something out of it. And I would love to learn from your questions. So please give your questions. I'll speak for about 15 to 20 minutes. And then I would love to get questions and we can get into a dialogue. So the topic that I have selected, for today is something that is sort of unique, for me. It's called Moments of Epiphany Along the Way. Things that emerged in clarity when my eyes were closed. So just think about it. It's been 31 years since I graduated, since I've been working, traveling all across the world. I've lived in the East Coast, in the West Coast. I lived in London. I lived back in India. I moved back to India for about 7 years, living in Bangalore. And I moved back to the East Coast about 3.5 years back. So I've seen a lot of the world as it has developed over the last 30 years. So I said, I would love to share a few points. Learning is mostly self-learning. Whatever learning we get from outside are inputs which we synthesize into a few simple precepts that we have. So I wanted to share a few of those with you. Things that emerged in clarity when my eyes were closed. So I'm going to speed up a little bit now and talk about what are some of those pearls that I've picked up, which have been helpful to me. Now, I want to share that with you. So first and foremost is working with people. Now, why do we need to work with people, and why is teamwork important? I'll come to teamwork in a second. Actually, let me come to this. Why is teamwork the only ticket to achievement in our career? Imagine when we are at work, when we are in college, teamwork was called cheating. If you were working in a team and you submitted a project, if you solved a mathematical problem together in a team, it was called cheating. And then tomorrow you are at work and everything is to do with teams. Now here is a view that I have, is that why, forget about your religious affiliation, why was God able to put the world together in 7 days? Actually, it was 6 days, because the seventh day was a day of rest. And the only reason for that was, I think, because God was alone. If God would be working in a team, I don't think he would have managed. But all of us, unless we are gods, we need to work in a team. So when we work in a team, for some reason, imagine you're sitting in a restaurant or you are in an elevator and you're overhearing other people talk. What is the topic that they talk about? Most of the time, they're talking about what other people did to them, how somebody else could not understand what they wanted to do. In other words, we are constantly looking at the world from our perspective. So that is not possible. We need to look at the world from their perspective. So everybody wants to be wanted. Treat others not the way you want to be treated, but the way they want to be treated. Our job is not to please ourselves. Our job is to get our job done, the job done. And in order to get the job done, whatever we need to do to others to ensure that they support us in getting the job done is our job. And that is why teamwork is important. I come back to teamwork in a little bit. What happens is that we are constantly looking at the world and we are looking for what is normal. And normal to us is anything that doesn't look like us. And that is not acceptable. So you combine these two aspects of saying you need to treat people the way they want to be treated. And normal is not what we think, but normal is what others think. Now, last point on teamwork and why it is important. Imagine that sometimes if you are in a project, you feel that if only others would let me be, if only my boss would stop interfering with me, I can get this job done. Now I can get it done. If I'm a capable person, I can get this much of work done. If I am a more capable person, I can get this much of work done. If I'm a powerful person, I can pick up a stone this big. If I'm the world champion in weightlifting, I can pick up a big stone. But the 10 weakest people can pick up a stone which is heavier than the most powerful weightlifter in the world. So we need to work in a team. So that's unfortunate. That's what we need to do. And that's the only ticket to success. The next one, the team has come together. What is our job? People, in my view, do not work for money and they do not work for fame. They work for a purpose. Very few people say that, if I do this, then this will happen and I'll make so much of money and people will recognize me. That recognition is there. I think everybody wants belonging. Everybody wants recognition. But the most important recognition is when you wake up in the morning and you're brushing your teeth and you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you say, am I proud of myself? There are many, many, many people who have found recognition which they in their heart of hearts know that they've got lucky. And let me tell you, they are not as happy at all as some external person might look. Somebody got massive fame and massive recognition, but in their heart of hearts, they know they are not really fulfilled, because what people want is to work for a purpose. Now, our job in a team, our job as managers is to actually give people a purpose. I have done this conversation multiple times, and it happens in teams, it happens in families, it happens definitely when you're making your annual plan, 5-year plan. What is your vision? Where do you want to go? So the question is, and I say this, and I've used this multiple times and it always works, is in order to chart a path for the future, there are only 2 things that you need to know. And I'll tell you these 2 things, and they might seem very, very simple, but they are not. The first thing is a realistic assessment of where you stand today. You ask anybody, you ask a student, you ask a company, you ask a business leader, saying, where do you stand today? And their assessment of where they stand today might be very different from an external person assessing them. How much market share do you have? What prospects do you have of succeeding in what you are trying to do? What do your colleagues think of you? What do your investors and your bosses think of you? Realistic assessment of your current situation is extremely difficult, because all of us are afraid of our own insecurities and we don't want to expose it. So the more you can expose your own insecurities, you will have an even better realistic assessment of your current situation. So that's point number 1. The point number 2 is, where do you want to go? What is your vision? What is your ultimate goal? So imagine you are in a big forest. You are in a big forest in the middle of mountains, and you need to first know which mountain you want to climb. And secondly, you need to know where do you stand, and then you can chart a path forward. It sounds simple, but there is another way. And let me tell you, that other way is what most people do. They are lost in a mountain and they have a machete. They have a small machete, and all that they are doing is they are hacking away at the undergrowth, hoping that a path will emerge, and it will not. So two things that we need to do. In order to give people a purpose, we need to have a realistic assessment of where we are today, and we need to know where we are going from a vision standpoint. Only then can you chart a path between from here to there. And it's not that easy. It sounds very simple. And Anijo, I'd love to get your views. You're constantly talking to people in academia. The other thing, and I've put together 8 or 9 points, and they are not in the same area. I could talk about teamwork for the entire session, but what I thought is I just pick up a few words of wisdom. So the points that I'm sharing are orthogonal to each other. So it will be a little bit of a jarring change of context. So pardon me for that. So the next one I'm talking about is leading people. So we all know this. When we are all young, there are so many bright young people, and we are all scared about how we are going to grow. But as soon as we become bosses, we become very suddenly there are much fewer good bosses than good subordinates. So leading people is extremely, extremely difficult. And my view is that everybody, now you have to have some philosophies based on which you lead people. My firm view in leading people is that everybody wakes up in the morning to do a good job. Now let me explain that. There are other ways to do it. You can assume that everybody wakes up in the morning to skim off the system. So you can have a set of controls, you can have a set of minimum benchmarks that everybody must reach every day before you think they are doing a good job. Because let's give a simple example. In the old Frederick Taylor theory of management, that everybody had to shovel so many so many ladles of coal. That was the Frederick Taylor model, that if you didn't shovel so many ladles of coal in 1 hour, then you were not doing your job. Now that's not the case in today's knowledge economy. In today's knowledge economy, I believe everybody wakes up in the morning, even the person in the Indian government secretariat, the peon who you're so frustrated that he or she doesn't do anything and doesn't move anything, but they also woke up in the morning to do a good job. Over a period of time, they gave up. Management mostly comes in the way. So our job is not to figure out how we are going to control people, but our job is to give purpose to people and create a path so that people can go and find what they want to do because they want to do a good job. Another thing that I keep saying at work is the most enjoyable work environment at any level is to think about how, when we were in college, when we were in undergrad, and we organized charity events, there was no incentive policy, there was no promotion, there was no money to be made, but we were there till 2 o'clock in the morning, cutting out, cinema tickets, selling it, making banners, bringing people together. Why were we doing it? We were doing it as a team. There was no boss. There was no designated, organizational structure. So if at work we can work like that, then we have a successful organization. But leading people becomes extremely, extremely difficult. All of you have heard this joke about a tree in which monkeys are sitting and everybody on top sees smiling faces when they look down, and everybody at bottom looks up and sees something different. And there is a reality to it. As people grow up, somehow it becomes more difficult. So that's about leading people. So I just cover a few points like this. And again, I'm moving to another completely orthogonal point, is about understanding business strategy. We talked about vision. We talked about where we are going to go. So what I'm talking about is moments of epiphany that I had over the last 31 years. So in various, you have to lead people, you have to work with a company, you have to create a team. So what are the simple principles that has helped me in understanding my job? So those are the things that I'm trying to share with you. Would love to get questions from you as we talk. I have another 2-3 points, and then I will stop for a little bit. Understanding business strategy. Everybody has talked about strategy. You can go to any bookstore, and there are books and books and books about strategy. And I know all of us can talk about strategy in a big way, but a simple one here that has helped me is strategy is not taking decisions for the future, but the future of current decisions. All of us can talk about, in tomorrow, we will do this and we will invest so much of money and we will do that. And talk about strategy for a student who wants to study that, now next semester, I'm going to do this. When I get into, and I'm going to start studying so many. So forget about the future. It's about what you're doing today. If you want to do something next semester, what are you doing today that will affect what you're doing next semester? If you want to study for 9 hours a day next semester, have you increased your number of hours of study by 15 minutes today? If you haven't done today, you will not do something in the future. So strategy is about taking decisions for the future, but the future of current decisions. So how am I doing stuff today? So if I knew my vision, if I knew where I was going, if I know where I am, if I have a strategy, do it today. It is not about tomorrow. I think that's a very, very powerful way of looking at strategy. Now, I talked about working with teams. I talked about creating a purpose. I talked about strategy. I talked about creating a plan. But let me tell you, life is not easy. I think all of us, when we were in college, when we were in school, we found life so difficult. But the biggest issue in college, when we are in college, before we start working, is that friends went out in the evening to a restaurant and actually they didn't call you. And you thought they were your friends. My God, your life is over. There's nobody who loves you, nobody who likes you. That's your biggest issue that will fall on your head. But as we grow up, life becomes difficult. Life becomes difficult, work becomes difficult. You have to deal with colleagues, you have to deal with your superiors, you have to deal with society, you have to deal with your family. When you're a kid, you really don't care. When you grow up, suddenly you realize that you're becoming an uncle to somebody, you're becoming, and all the other family issues which you thought you only upward delegated start coming on to you. It becomes difficult. It's adversity. How do we overcome adversity? I feel one of the biggest challenges, which is like a dampener to our long-term success, is that we wake up one day in the morning and just don't want to do it anymore. We say, hey, life is too difficult, it's too political. Hence, the more and more successful people you see them light on their feet, you see them smiling, you see them joking, you see them as if they don't have a care in the world. It's not that they don't have a care in the world. They only know that they can survive if they don't have a care in the world. They care deeply. They care absolutely deeply. But if they really allow each thing to, I'll give you another thing is, if we become too emotional about everything that we want to do, we will not be able to, the emotions, they cloud the brain and it doesn't allow us to take decisions with clarity. So overcoming adversity and hard work is not the answer. This is in my own life. I think this came to me about 15 or 20 years back. And I was very confident about one thing in my career is that, and I'm going into a little bit of self-reflection and I'll come out very quickly. This was not a part of the plan, but I quickly realized in my own career that I'm not smart. I'm not very smart. I can't solve a Rubik's Cube. I can't solve a multivariate equation. I just can't do it. I can't read books and assimilate as fast as other people can. But I knew one thing. Nobody can beat me in how hard I work. I can do that. I can shift a lot of bricks from one side and move it to another side more efficiently and longer than anybody else can. But about 15 to 20 years back, I realized that that's not the answer. I can't shift more bricks than I already have. There is a limitation to it. I have to outthink others. And outthink others can only be when you go into your zone and you think through. If you're fighting all the time, you will not be able to outthink. And that is why meditation is important. That is why reflection is important. Overcoming adversity. And adversity will come. If it comes every day, there's a problem. But I would say maybe at least once a year for sure, you will think the world is crashing down on you and you need to go for a long walk at that point in time and think. And that's very, very important. It happens to all of us. It happens to the best of us. That's and I pretty much am coming to the end of my points. But I talked about all of this. I talked about the way we came. I talked about overcoming adversity, and all of these things are like pebbles on our back. We have a backpack which is empty when we start our lives, when we start our career, and every now and then we put a pebble in there. Somebody didn't give me a promotion, pebble. Somebody, didn't invite me to the dinner, a pebble. Somebody took my idea and made a presentation and did not give me credit, pebble. And over a period of time, the backpack gets so heavy that we, sort of give up. So one of the theories I have is that if at age 45, you can have the same zeal that you worked with at age 25, nobody can keep you back. But the problem is the person keeping you back is not your boss. The person keeping you back is not the job opportunities that are not there, is your backpack and the pebbles that you are carrying. And you need to be young through your life. And that's how you're going to go ahead. And that's an important thing. And finally, this is my last point. And this is a very important point. I'll talk about it. Success. What is success? I am asking a philosophical question, and I'm not intending to answer it in a very philosophical way. But the important thing is success is only in the future. It is a pursuit, not a destination. I'll give you a business example. Imagine that you came up with a vision saying that you want to become a $1 billion company. You became a $1 billion company. Was that success? Absolutely not. It is just a one other insignificant milestone in the long journey towards success. So you achieved $1 billion, in March of whatever 2023. But what happened on February of 2023? Were you not successful? Of course you were successful. Now imagine in March you achieved $1 billion. One day after that, what do you mean? You don't need to do anything? Absolutely not. So success is only in the future. So whatever we want to do, and that is why they say real pursuit can only be in the pursuit of something that is not achievable. And one of the things that I have used in my life, and with that, Anijo, I'll pass it back to you. And I'm again going back into self-reflection. And this has worked for me for the last 30 years. What I have used as a parameter of success, or I talk of the vision of where I want to go, and I've used it for the last 30 years, is that my pursuit, my path, where I want to go is I want to be the person who makes the 10 people around me happy and 10 people around me able to do their job. If I can allow 10 people around them to do their job, and if those 10 people can allow the 10 people around them to do the job, and I can create a purpose for where everybody wants to go, and I can every now and then bring people down to a really realistic assessment of where they are, and all of them work together as a team, my job is done, and I can continue doing that. So that's a few moments of epiphany that I have brought together over the last 30 years. I don't know if it was any use, but I wanted to share it. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, and would love to take questions. And over to you, Anijo.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Anjan. As always, so energetic and so interesting. We have a very vibrant chat going around at the background, so I have a few questions for you. I'm going to start with one very easy question for you, right? So this comes from Arup Sutshi, 84 mechanical batch. And his question is, what keeps you up at night?
Arup, very nice to hear from you, Arup. Thank you for the question. I can give a short answer. I can give a long answer. I was reading a book by Alan Greenspan, and all of us know Alan Greenspan, or at least those of us who are above a certain age. And he wrote in September, around this time, 1987, the world was crashing down, and he was traveling at that time. And he said the biggest test for me was to see if I could sleep at night. And I failed that test for maybe 20 years in my career. I confess I could not sleep. I would wake up right through the night, 8-9 times a day, with whatever issues I had at that point in time. I feel that I have worked at the edge of my competence every day of my career, and I feel I'm going to drop off. I'm not going to survive tomorrow, and I haven't been able to sleep. But over the last maybe less than 10 years, maybe 5 to 10 years, I've overcome that. And doesn't matter what happens, my ability to switch everything off and sleep is my extremely important pillar with which I can continue climbing up. And hence I sleep at night. I don't stay awake, Arun.
That's great. Thank you so much for that response. Just one request, Anjan. Can you stop sharing your screen so we can see your full screen?
Thank you. Stop share. Yeah, thank you.
That's great. Yeah, okay. I think we should be, just give us, I think the streaming takes a little bit of time, so we're just going to wait a little bit before we get to that. Okay, that's fantastic. Okay, so the next question is something that I have a little bit of a problem with, right? And you defined normal as any view that is not yours. I like that a lot. But isn't the prevailing thought that leaders should lead and others should follow? The mentality that we are all sort of subscribing to today is the Steve Jobs mentality, right? Where he went in and micromanaged everything. And of course, there's evidence that there's some success in that, which is today Apple is the first $1 trillion company. What do you think?
So a very, very good question. And it's a very question that is very close to me. And I'll make a heretical comment here, is that I feel I have nothing to learn from Steve Jobs. We've all read about him. I've finished his book, Walter Isaacson. We've consumed. I have nothing to learn from Steve Jobs. And the reason is I am not Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was probably one of the most creative, one of the most intelligent, one of the most left and right thinking people around. I am not. I am a simple guy. I need to follow simple precepts that I can manage. And then you said something that isn't our job to ensure people follow us. Absolutely not. I think the definition of leadership, and I'll give a definition of leadership that I like, is a leader is a person whom you choose to follow to go to a place where you would not go by yourself. So leader doesn't say, like Moses, come follow me. Leader simply says, that's a beautiful place to go. Does anybody want to go there? Let's try to figure it out. I think that's the leader. Steve Jobs has nothing to teach to me. Maybe he has a lot to teach to me, but I don't think I can learn anything from him. I can learn a lot from, I think, Bill Gates. We can talk of many, many, many people, not Steve Jobs.
Right, that's fantastic. So one question that comes from two people. One is Paras Agrawal, who is a final year student at BIT, and another is Ramesh Gupta, who is 89 ECE badge. So what is the industry need from new graduates? How can BIT Mesra prepare ourselves, right? So there's several questions that lead up to this. There's a faculty member from the ECE department. There are other people who are asking the same question. How do we realize our demographic dividend, right? We have so many young people, yet we are training them in those, the age-old philosophy. So what are some of the ways that education can change, and how can we prepare our new graduates?
So, a very vast area, but let me try to give a few points. So there are two parts to education. One is learning how to learn, and the second is learning something. So let's talk about the old world management graduates who, those were all learning how to learn. So I just want a smart person with wide areas of interest and understanding, who can think, who can grow, etc., etc. Now that will continue to be, and that is the bedrock of education. So one part you must have is learning how to learn. And it will sound strange, but a good graduate should understand philosophy, should understand poetry, should understand obviously, etc., etc., and leave all of that. So you should be a well-rounded personality. You should understand politics, should understand what's going on in the world. Otherwise, you will not be able to take decisions which are complex. On the other hand, you must know something. which can be applied because you're a graduate, you are 21 years old. So this world is a complex machinery, and you must get it must be a screw or a pin or a plug which can go in somewhere. So you must know something, and you must be really, really good at it. Again, come back to Malcolm Gladwell. You must have spent 10,000 hours with it. So you must have learnability, which means you must be a little good in a lot of stuff. And there must be one thing that you are really, really, really good at. That could be anything. That could be mathematics. That could be accounting. That could be astronomy. That could be unfortunately, in India, over the last 20 years, there's been Java. Everybody has been learning Java. Thankfully, that is changing again. But you need to be a little good in many things and very, very, very good in one thing when you get up.
So this is interesting because you mentioned Peter Drucker in terms of strategy, right? When I teach my students, I like to channel. So one thing that I'd like to channel is Roger Martin, who is the former dean of Rotman School of Business at Toronto. His work, especially with P&G's A.G. Lafley, is well known within the academic and the business circles. And it resembles what you're saying, that he says strategy has two parts. The first part is rigor, right? Which is the understanding of what really good thing, analytics, and so on. The second part is creativity. Which is this idea that you're bringing in philosophy, poetry, this ability to think beyond all of that. What role do you think creativity plays in your own development of strategy?
So again, this is your area, design thinking, and which has really brought in this whole creativity. I must tell you, I feel I'm limited in that. I'm personally limited, and hence I'm acutely looking for people with a more creative bent of mind around me. I see the need for it because I had talked earlier about hard work is not the answer. So there you need creativity. You need out of the box thinking. That creativity can't be the most efficient software program. It has to be something completely different. It has to come through ways of thinking that you can't think about. So I think for me, I know I'm limited in it. Hence, I'm constantly looking for people around me with creativity, which can't be taught.
So how do students start to build that? I don't know if it has changed, but we don't have that many philosophy and poetry classes at BIT. So what are some of the ways that students can?
Most important thing, I think there is nobody in this world, I think, who has done well for long periods of time unless they have read books, read about other people. And I keep talking about it, but I don't think it is going anywhere. I think it's going in the reverse. Whoever is listening, you need to read, and it is online browsing does not count. Magazines do not count. Magazines are important, but you need to read books because, Anijo, to your point, when you are reading a book, you are with the author. And the author was a creative person, and I'm talking of fiction as well as, and I'm not talking of technical books. I'm talking of fiction, because there is philosophy. There are different characters coming around who are coming alive. You're walking through the whole thing. Read about history. Very important. Read. What do you get? What do you get? I think that's how you overcome that. But I've been saying it. I don't think many people do it.
Okay, so here's a little bit of a tough question, which is very poignant, right? So this is from Ramesh Gupta, 89EC. You talked about teamwork. You have a superstar in your team, but she doesn't or he doesn't have the team spirit. I don't want to lose him because he's very critical to my project. But how do I turn him into a team player?
Ramesh, that's number one. If you were not able to turn, then that person needs to go. So that's one. So let's just start with the end in mind. Values and teamwork. If somebody violates your values, and typically teamwork will be part of your values, if somebody violated your values in a way that is very blatant, that person does not last. So now the question is, how do you work with that person and how do you turn them around? Before I get there, and again, people who are on this call, and I think many people will support me, there is nothing called a superstar. There is nothing called a superstar. Steve Jobs died, Apple continued. Bill Gates went away, continued. All of us think, many of us were alive when Indira Gandhi died. Actually, I was in BIT at that time. After Indira, what will happen? India continued. There's nothing called a superstar. Nobody is important in this world, least of all yourself. So that's one. That's an important acceptance. Second is how to turn them around. I think a realistic assessment of the current situation. A 360-degree feedback process is a very, very powerful process. A skip review process is a powerful process. I'll not go into how you do those things, but I have seen skip reviews being very effective. 360-degree feedback requires maturity in the organization and requires 3-4 years before it actually turns around. But there are some management tools which you can use to try to turn these people around. First and foremost, if anybody thinks they are a superstar, our job as managers is to tell them that they are not, because there is nothing called a superstar. I don't know if I answered your question, Anijo.
Well, I think part of the problem that we have today is that we've sort of been fed this idea that the individual is the core of everything, right? I mean, this individual mantra, this is a Western ideal, but in India, that's not true. I mean, we've always been, as a culture, a very communal culture. We solve problems together. The idea of the panchayat is a very a complex idea that channels that, right? The individual by themselves cannot solve anything. I think that's what you're also saying.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right? Okay, so this leads into another question, which is very good. It's very specific and poignant for you because you worked in both places. You worked in India as a CEO, and you worked in the US and Europe as a CEO. What is the major difference in work culture and people's attitude in these two places? So this is Sheetal Pratik from EC03 who is asking this. One related question is, I think there's also this dreamer attitude within Indian students where they say, how can we leave India, right? Now, how can we keep talent to work in India and help India to progress? So this comes from Vishal Shah, a professor. So the first question is, what's the difference in work culture? And the second question is, what can India do to change?
So I'll answer it, because there are many angles you can take it. Differences in work culture, I'll talk of two things. One is, I must have worked intensely. By worked intensely means, I must be in more than 30 countries. I must have traveled to much more than that. Amazingly, human beings all across are pretty much the same. They have the same issues. They have the same problems. They have same family problems, same work problems, same issues. But there are some deep contrasts between the professional setup in India and the US. At a macro level, the Indian professional setup is a learned setup from the US, because the companies that we work with, forget about. So we have learned professionalism in the Western sense in the last 30 years, and that's really come from the US. So before that, it was the British and all of those companies, sort of, I think, Indian, Imperial Chemical Industries or ITC, which picked up the British, but most of the new companies have really picked up the American style. So it's almost indistinguishable, the way we run meetings, the way we do plannings, etc., etc. You can imagine if it's a Chinese style versus the Indian style versus an American style. The Indian style will be much closer to the American style than what the Chinese or Japanese style will be. So that's one. Having said that, there's one big difference in managing people and people's aspiration in India versus the US. Whereas in the US, most of the Western world, the focus on the work and the quantity and the impact of the work and their own connection with the work is important. In India, the societal view of that piece of work is more important. So this is the real story. Somebody came to me or came to somebody who I was working closely with and said, hey, give me a promotion, but cut my salary, but give me a promotion. What will my family say? We said that, hey, your job hasn't increased, etc., etc. There are other people. So, no, I have to go and tell my father-in-law that I got a promotion. Give me a promotion, cut my salary, not a problem. So similarly, even when you go up in the ranks, an Indian, CEO has to be called, chairman and managing director, something, something, something. Abroad, you call them anything, but give them the job, it will work. So I think that is a major contrast, Ramesh. And the second question was about globalization and going. So here, aren't we, very good question, but let's talk of globalization and let's talk of nationalities. Are nations becoming less important today? Are they important at all? Let me argue, let's take Google. Has India not benefited from the innovation of Google? Has India not benefited from drones? Is it important that everybody needs to innovate everything in every country? I think no. I think India has. So should we really think of societal and macro innovation? Do we really need to think of the country? We should think of the societies that we work in and wherever we are. I think we should look at localization where we are. But do we really need to say that we should? So in other words, if we are skilled in a certain area, should we look at where our skill can be applied to the best, or should we say it must be applied in this state, in this place first? I don't know the answer to that. And I think it bears debate.
Okay, Anjan. So shifting conversations, right? So this idea of outthinking others is a very interesting idea. So this is not something we are taught in the education system in India, right? Like this outthinking others. In fact, we are taught that if you work hard, everything will come to you. So one of the questions is a final year student, Prema Agrawal, asked this question, right? How do we prevent ourselves from becoming monotonous in our work, right? How do we make sure that we are not doing just this? We're doing very hard something that we shouldn't be doing.
So, Prerna, very good question. And again, I'll hark back to a best practice, which is fairly well agreed. So, two things. They say that, our brain is like, I don't know how many of you make dough to make, rotis, chapatis. So, if you keep the dough sitting for a while, it becomes hard. But if you keep kneading it, it keeps soft. Our brain is like that. If we don't challenge our brain, it becomes monotonous. It becomes... So in other words, one of the things it says is keep learning something new, keep challenging some new part of your brain. And that can happen in several ways. First and foremost, I said, every time you read a book about a topic which is orthogonally different from what you are exposed to, you're challenging a part of your brain. Another thing it says is learn a new skill, learn Chinese cooking, go on a trek, learn yoga, learn how to rollerblade. Learn how to dance, do something new. The best practice says do something new every year. So, this is just as this thing says, when was the last time you did something for the first time? When was the last time you did something for the first time? Ask that question. And if the question is a long time back, there's a problem, Prerna. Work on that.
That's great. I think as a culture, we are encouraged to do something outside of our core competency, but our system, the literacy system that we have developed as an environment or the social practice prevents us from doing that, right? So this comes from Aditya Mishra, who's a first-year physics undergraduate student, who says, is it a problem that we have a literacy system in place of an education system, that we need to show that we are learning rather than actually learning things, right? So that's one. The second part of the question is again by Arup Suchi 84 Mac, who asked, right, like, is technology going to change things? How are you preparing because of that technology. How is technology changing our way to learn, how building strategy, company policies, all of that?
So Arup, very, very good question. I'll take your question first. Is technology changing? I think technology is changing. I will confess that even a short while back, I did not think driverless cars were going to come. I did not think artificial intelligence was something which was going to really impact. We've been hearing about artificial intelligence for a long time, and I did not think it was really going to come. But what has happened? Driverless cars are coming. The bots, you sit with the bots these days, you can't imagine where it has reached, and I think it is going to come. The epiphany for me was I was reading a New York Times article maybe about a year and a half back, where there was a description of a basketball match. It was an editorial about a basketball match, and there were two editorials of the same basketball match describing what happened during the match. And they said one of the articles was written by a journalist and one of the articles was written by a computer. Can you say which one? I know it was not possible. I mean, those things are coming. Is technology going to change the job? Yes, it will. But my answer to that is technology has been changing the work since the day the wheel got invented and the human beings became more and more productive. And I think that will happen. Having said that, human beings 400 years back worked 20 hours a day and they slept for 4 hours a day. The 20 hours, they were maybe 1,000 years back, they were hunting, gathering. Slowly it has come down to, Saturday, Sunday is a day of rest. Now, why is Saturday, Sunday a day of rest, except for, a historical reason? We don't know. So does everybody in this world really need to work for 8 hours a day? Can they spend more time in creative energy? I think that will come. I think leisure will increase and leisure-related stuff will increase, but we will get more productive and we'll get even more enabled with technology. I think that's my answer. The other question you need to mention again.
Well, I think Prerna Agrawal was commenting on your point of view about how education system is not about literacy.
I got it. Hey, thank you so much for the question. I think, I have two daughters, and they're in high school, and I see all the things that they are learning, and I say, my God, do I use any of this? What is going on? Why are they learning so much? And now they'll go into college. They have so many more years of learning, and they'll never use it. Integration of, what are you going to do with Gauss's theorem? And what am I going to do with Gauss's theorem or Bernoulli's equation? I think it is teaching learnability, it is teaching discipline, and it is teaching what is there to learn in the world. Imagine when you go to a college, some of the larger colleges in the US, you can learn anything. You can take up South Indian classical dance in your undergrad program. So it is teaching learnability and discipline, not necessarily what you learn in that book, is my view.
Anjan, what is the biggest obstruction you have encountered in your life? This is coming from
myself. It's always myself. I think the biggest obstruction, obviously I talked of adversity, and there have been many adversities. Thankfully, not that many, but some pretty big. And some I have overcome, some I have decided to skirt. Most of them I've overcome. But when I have looked back and reflected on what really was the adversity, and we tended to blame so many things, circumstances, etc., etc. I think the biggest adversity was myself, always. It was myself who was preventing myself from doing what I know I could have done in hindsight. So if I could have had that hindsight in the past, I don't think that adversity would have remained. I look at several things today, which in times past, I would consider as adversity. We all talk about stress, and I have an equation for stress. Stress equals what you need to do minus your capabilities. So stress equals what you need to do minus your capabilities. So in other words, if your capabilities are equal to what you need to do, you have no stress. So I think adversity, my biggest was always myself.
That's very interesting, because Mihai Csikszentmihalyi would say that the ability for us, we reach a sort of success zone when our abilities don't match up to our the challenges that we set for ourselves. So our challenges should be a little higher than the ability, right? And that's the only way that we can grow, is we always set challenges a little bit more. But the problem is that we always get worried about that gap, right? And then we get into this trouble of...
And to that, I would say, very good point. I think stress, you should never be without stress, because without stress, you can't. So I think everybody, all of us have a measure of stress, and we fill it up no matter what. Somebody who is a cobbler on the street also has stress, and somebody who's Steve Jobs also had stress. So we fill it up. But the key thing is to how to manage the size of the cup and how to ensure it is always full. So if it empties out because my abilities increase, I need to increase my what I need to do. Keep the cup full all the time. I think that's the challenge.
Okay, so we only have like a few more minutes, and I have a very good question from Arup Zuchi. I'm a 25-year-old, not Arup, obviously, but what should I do? Look for a job or start a company?
I have a very simple answer to that. And Arup, thank you for the question. I have a very simple answer, and I have been lucky enough to start a company, and I work professionally, so I have both sides. If anybody sits down in a room and is asking yourself that question, that I'm 25 years old, should I take this job or should I start a company, is the wrong question. Because if you wanted to start a company, you would have done it already. Starting a company is like poetry or giving birth to somebody. You're pregnant and you have to give birth. It is not a question of saying, should I become pregnant or should I not become? That's not the question. The question is, it's already with you. So if whoever is asking that question, take a job, relax.
That's very interesting. Okay, so Jeff Bezos recently said that he doesn't believe in work-life balance, and he believes in work-life harmony. So we have another question here. What does work-life balance or work-life harmony mean to you, right? How do you do this, Anjan, right? You were in a really complex negotiation situation yesterday. You're talking to us today. You have to fly out at 4 p.m. today. And yet I just saw you before this, that you had your daughter there. She was, working with you. How do you do this?
So I completely agree with Jeff Bezos' work-life balance. I don't understand the question of work-life balance, which means that my life and my work are separate. They are not. It is one. That doesn't mean that my life is my work or my work is my life. I enjoy what I'm doing every single moment. So if I was there yesterday doing something, I was not at work. I was enjoying what I was living. So I'm always living and I'm always working. So there is nothing called work-life balance. It is not that, I'm done and I'm going to stop working. Am I going to stop living when I stop working? Absolutely not. There is nothing called work-life balance. It is work and life is the same thing. It is only one thing is, are you enjoying yourself? Are you having a great time? And that's the only question.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I think that's really important as we start to see this complex economy, which is built with technology. I mean, look at what we are doing, right? I'm in Chicago, you're in New Jersey, people all around the world. We have students from India and professors from India joining into this conversation. And I'm sure it's, like 9:30 in India in the night, whereas it's 12 o'clock for you in New Jersey. And it's just amazing what technology has enabled us. So I think this is a great conversation. We are at almost at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock Eastern. I do want to thank you. I know you have a lot going on. I thank you for taking time out to talk to us, giving us these moments of epiphany. As always, Subhash Basu, who's the soul of BIT Mesra, sort of the cricket Jimmy Cricket at the back telling us he wanted to remind everybody that there is a community, right? Even though it is not apparent because our alumni networks are not that strong yet, unlike American universities. We want to remind everybody watching this that there is a community out there. There are luminaries like Arup Zurchi, Anjan Lahiri, all of these people who have done so much with their lives, Subhash Basu, who is ready to talk to you, right? So there's a lot of opportunity for us to tap into this community, find other people who can tell us what to do, advise us. If you're starting a company, there's lots of us that started our own companies. So Subhash has asked me to remind everybody that this community exists and that you should tap into this. This particular series, the BITMAA-Munch series, is a way for us to highlight some of those luminaries. Anjan, thank you so much for being the first of our speakers, and I really appreciate what you're doing for BIT Mesra and the alumni community, in spite of everything that you're entrenched in. Thank you for, I think we now have 52 people watching this from around the world. So this is amazing. Thanks to everybody who made this possible. And we look forward to seeing you at the next BIT Munch webinar. Have a nice day and please keep in touch. Thank you
very much indeed. Thank you very much. And thank you, Arup, for all your questions. Thank you.
All right. Have a good day, everybody. See you soon again. Bye-bye.